This is the third video in the series Evaluating Sources, and the topic of this one is evaluating content. And this one is one that I think students struggle with the most. It's easy to find information about publications. It's often easy, not always, but often easy to find information about the author, about the reviewer, but it's harder for students to identify details in the content of the review that helps to establish its quality and the credibility of the reviewer. So just to review here, we've talked about the publication, we've talked about the author, we're going to talk about content now. So what I recommend that you do to evaluate the content is to read the review several times. Read it several times. And while you're reading, annotate it. Take notes on it. Print it out. Get your pen in your hand. And as you're reading, jot down your observations and ideas. Underline and circle things. And look up unfamiliar words, places, or people. So when you're annotating the review, when you're taking your notes, what should you be looking for? There are five things that I'm going to list for you here to help you judge the credibility of a source. We're looking at the information contained in the review. So does the reviewer demonstrate knowledge of the history and technical aspects of theatrical performance? Does the reviewer seem to know the director, the actors, the stagehands? Do they talk to any of these people? Have they had any prior experience interacting with the people involved in the production of the play? Does the reviewer really understand the play? Since you've read Long Day's Journey Tonight, you know what it's about, you know what the themes are. You've thought a lot about the characters. Does the reviewer have a really strong understanding of the play? Do they understand it better than you do? So again, third criterion here, if you see evidence of that as you're reading your review, you should mark it. Does the reviewer know a lot about Eugene O'Neill's life, or maybe some of his other plays or other things that he's written? That certainly would be evidence of a reviewer's knowledge and expertise. And finally, the question of tone. A good academic reviewer will be fairly objective. They're not going to be overly enthusiastic or glowing about a performance. On the flip side, they're not going to be really nasty and hateful either. They're going to be pretty objective and look for what works and what doesn't work. If a review seems a little bit biased, my guess would be that it's probably more of a popular review, maybe somebody trying to sell tickets for a theater. So just be careful. Look for evidence of objectivity, where the writer really wants to show both sides of the play, the performance, good and bad. So I'm going to put some excerpts from J. Chris Westgate's review, one of his reviews, up here, and show you some of the things that I noticed in it that illustrate some of these criteria. So the first indication that I get of his expertise is his knowledge of the history of the Maverick Theater Company. Specifically, he knows the history of the company's financial insolvency, and you can read that excerpt there. So he knows about this company. So he seems to have a lot of extra knowledge about the theater. He also uses technical terms and theater jargon like non-equity actors you see here. He uses other terms like upstage wall. And in other passages, he uses really high-level literary terms like objective correlative. And this kind of vocabulary, if you encounter it, you should look it up and see what it means. And this indicates to me that Westgate is really not writing for a general audience. He's writing for an academic audience. He's writing for an audience who already knows what these words mean, and he doesn't have to explain to them. Familiarity with the director, actors, and stagehands. I didn't really see that in this review. A clear, detailed understanding of the play. Certainly, Westgate understands the play. He recognizes a crucial moment in the play, as well as one of the play's major themes right here when he talks about the scene that we spent a lot of time talking about in class. Mary talking about the past becoming the present and the future too. So the fact that he recognizes that moment as well certainly helps with his credibility and reliability. He also recalls Eugene, James and Mary's dead infant son, and surmises that the photograph that she's carrying in that scene must be a photograph of Eugene. So he knows the details of the play pretty well. Expert knowledge about Eugene O'Neill's life and other writings. Westgate also mentions what other critics have said about the play. He cites another critic named Una Chaudhuri, for example, and he even quotes from a letter written by Eugene O'Neill to George John Nathan, who was an important theater critic in Eugene O'Neill's time and a close friend of O'Neill. And so Westgate expects his audience to recognize Nathan's name, but all of this shows that he is very knowledgeable about O'Neill's private life, and he's also knowledgeable about the ongoing scholarly conversation about Eugene O'Neill's work. And finally, a consistently objective, unbiased tone throughout the review. Westgate shows a degree of discernment, critical discernment, that reveals not only his intelligence, but also his desire to produce an objective review that is not biased because he's a fan of Eugene O'Neill or because of any personal connections that he might have with the Maverick Theater Company. So even though his review is mostly positive, he says mostly nice things about the performance that he saw, the fact that he finds fault with some of the performances adds to his credibility. So here he's talking about the actor playing Tyrone, felt like he was a little flat and didn't have the style that that was appropriate for Tyrone's character, since Tyrone is an actor who quotes Shakespeare. Now he felt that the actor that played Tyrone was a little flat. So this shows that that Westgate is trying to be fair and objective. And again, that helps with credibility for sure. So before moving on, before ending this video, I want to talk a little bit about works cited entries for reviews, do a little troubleshooting here. This is I call this a coda, kind of a going back to the video series on formatting works cited entries. And we're going to talk a little bit about reviews here because there are some complicating factors with reviews. So here's a screenshot of the Westgate review that I used in this lesson. And first, notice that the publication is the Eugene O'Neill Review. Sometimes students confuse the publication with the publisher. The publisher is the Pennsylvania State University Press. But that is not the publication. So do not confuse publisher and publication. The publication is the Eugene O'Neill Review. In fact, you won't need to put the Pennsylvania State University Press on your works cited page. You should know why that is if you don't go back and watch the video lesson on works cited entries for periodicals. So a PDF is preferable, but for this review, it was only available as an HTML document. And that's going to create problems for me as for my works cited entry here. I've inserted a screenshot of the review. There is a DOI, and that was not listed in the database record for this review. But when I opened it up in HTML, I see the DOI there, so I'm going to need that for my works cited entry. If I didn't have it, I would be using the URL. There are no page numbers, of course. So my parenthetical citations, if I quoted from this review, would just say Westgate if I needed a parenthetical citation at all. But going back to the database record for this review, I want you to look at the source line again and look at the page numbers. It says P278, 4P period. Now think about what that might mean, and take a look at these 3 different works cited entries and look at the page numbers, how I listed the page numbers, and think about which one would be correct. Just pause the video for a moment and take a look at these and think about which one is accurate. Okay, it's not this one. And it's not this one. The one in the middle is correct. And the reason for that is, even if you use HTML, if your source was originally paginated, if it had page numbers, you must include them in your works cited entry. Since you cannot see the page numbers in an HTML document, you must use the information provided by Galileo. In this instance, I see that the article starts on page 278, P278, and then that it is 4 pages long, 4P period. So whenever you see that construction in the database record for your sources, P278, 4P, that means it starts on this page and it is this many pages long. So on my works cited page, I would write pages 278 to 81. You just do the math and add 3 pages to 278 to get to 4. Sometimes you may come across something like 278 plus, and it may not tell you how many pages long the article is. It'll just say page 278 plus. If this happens and there's no PDF, you can't figure out how long the article actually is, then you'll just have to put 278 plus in your works cited entry. That'll be the best you can do. But that is a last resort. So there's the correct one. Big foghorn there. So for citing reviews, for listing reviews on your works cited page, if you want to see how to do it, you're going to go back to the OWL, the Online Writing Lab, and you're going to need to look at how to list a review by clicking on MLA Works Cited Page Periodicals and scrolling down to Review. But don't forget, you're also pulling your review from a database. So you're combining how to list a review in a periodical with how to list the review from a database. So here's the review. Again, that's in MLA Works Cited Page Periodicals. And what I've done here is just listed out the things that I'm going to have to put in my works cited entry. So just take a moment to look at these. All these things are going to have to be in there. So since the review has no title, I just put the name of the author, Westgate, J period, Chris period, and then review of Long Day's Journey into Night. Don't forget the play is italicized, comma, and then the director, directed by so-and-so. This review appeared in the Eugene O'Neill Review. That's the title of the original periodical, volume 35, number 2, fall 2014, pages 278 to 81. And then, of course, I identify the original database, the Gale Literature Resource Center, and the DOI, and then my access date. But what if your review does have a title? You would insert the title of the review inside quotation marks here, followed by a period, and then review of Long Day's Journey into Night, etc., just like the example above. Now, titles are kind of tricky. Long Day's Journey into Night is not going to be the title of a review. If that's what it says the title is, forget it. You're just writing review of Long Day's Journey into Night. Also, eliminate things like theater review from the beginnings of titles. Those are not actually part of the title. I would say 60 to 70% of the reviews out there are not titled. Some of them are, and it's pretty obvious when it's titled. If you don't know, you can always ask me. But if it has a title, it should go inside quotation marks followed by a period. Some students have been asking me about how to break URLs so that they don't create strange looking gaps of white space on the right side of your works cited page. If you decide to break your URL and send it to the next line to make it look a little cleaner, just do it at a punctuation mark. Never add punctuation marks and never break your URL in between characters. Do it after a punctuation mark, like a period or a forward slash, as I did here. But again, you don't have to break your URLs and DOIs if you don't want to. But if you're a perfectionist like I am, I don't like all that white space that can show up on the right side, so I'll break it if I need to. And that concludes this third video on evaluating sources.